Hi, Paul.
Yeah. Hold on.
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Just landed back.
Good stuff. Yeah, trying to, it's going well this afternoon. Lots of good scores going on, so we're kind of cracking
yeah,
on.
It looks interesting. I was having to try and pretend to be sociable, but but having an eye on what was going on. Featherstone that looked like a shock in the making, but Newcastle only 12-6 down to Halifax.
Yeah. I mean, that's
good.
Yeah.
For us.
Halifax. Well, when you look at Toulouse beating London Broncos convincingly, but then you got third place versus 10th place, I think it is, or 11th even, and it's really close.
Yeah,
it just shows, doesn't it, that there's kind of two out in front, but the rest are really close.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I like those. They've started popping up on Twitter. Started off with Premier League, where instead of just showing the teams in order on the table with Premier League, they put them alongside how many points they had. And so you can see how far, Man City or Liverpool, whoever it is, you can see, where they're bunched and where they're not. So Newcastle might not be that many places behind Halifax.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of points. That's a bigger. If Newcastle were to get a win at Halifax, that's a bigger shock than it looks like on the league table.
Yeah.
Just on positions. But yeah, interesting. I see Wakey. Huddersfield come back against Wakefield as well, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean that Halifax result will be, I don't know what the Halifax team's like today. That's the other thing, I suppose. Halifax are kind of.
They had their cup final last week, didn't they?
Wow. Wowzers.
Are we live, by the way?
Yeah.
Is everyone watching this?
Yeah, we're live. Yeah, it's a live show. So you can't say anything else. You can't say, it was the cup final and that's the end of the season. It's clearly not going to be the end of the season, is it?
I mean, that's year. I mean, it's probably the most likely interesting thing that could happen in the championship is Halifax coming third and then beating Fev in the semi-final.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd have thought Fev would frame themselves. I was saying to who was I saying it to? Aggie, I think. Last week, I've never seen a team throw the ball directly into touch more often and still win. It's not like Halifax. Halifax Panthers aren't Penrith Panthers, but they are.
You're having a dig today, mate.
You're bitter from last week.
Wow. Wowzer.
But no. I genuinely, I do think they could get past Fev. I'd be really surprised if they then were able to beat Toulouse in Toulouse to get into Super League. I mean, stranger things have happened, but that would be for them to pick it up 2 weeks on a trot. It probably has as you can see, if they're only beating Newcastle by 6, then probably as likely as them getting a surprise against Fev is for them to mess up in the first week of the playoffs, because that's sudden death, straight knockout.
Yeah. Why do you think Toulouse are doing so well this season?
That's a good question. Just they're really good. They've been brewing over a while, haven't they? They were. It's probably more the question why did Fev? Why did they not make the £1 million match against Toronto in 2019?
Yeah.
Actually, really, that should have been. No disrespect to Fev. They went and did a job on them, but this has been coming for a while, really. It is a combination. London. To be fair, also Featherstone fans will say, well, actually, stuff in London is something that Fev did as well. they absolutely hammered London out of sight. It could have been even more. You know, it was 50 odds with still half an hour left, and they put the key on the rack a bit. So I think there's still a bit. You know, I know Toulouse beat Featherstone at Featherstone. It looks like Toulouse are a nose ahead of Featherstone at the moment, but I just think it seems like both Toulouse and Catalan have had a plan and put it into place, and it's moved them both up a bit of a level. And they aren't. You know, a lot of people were tipping Fev to beat Toulouse last week, but they didn't actually. You know, it wasn't that close in the end. So, yeah, why is that?
Do you think, we got to consider the Brexit implications as well, because you know, some of the, and you know, some people might laugh at that. You know, I know you were laughing in a kind of understanding way there, but some people go, well, what's Brexit got to do with anything? But some of these players would not get a visa to play in the UK as easily as they probably would have done in the past. So maybe some of the French players have decided, well, you know, I'm going to go and get on the books of Toulouse, or I'm going to. I'd rather make my life easy in a kind of, you know, in the 25 of Catalan Dragons, rather than being in the first 13 of, you know, Dewsbury, for example. Just to make life easier for themselves, and also, you know, these teams are probably thinking it's a bit harder to get English players to come and play in France. And, you know, I don't know Toulouse how many. I know the Bentley brothers played out in France for a while, didn't they? You know, and things like that, where they went out there. I know they were Kiwis, but they were, you know, the players would come over from Australia, New Zealand, and England and go to France when they kind of like weren't quite making the grade. And I'm not sure that's happening as much now, and they're kind of focusing more on French players, it seems. Judging by the Catalan, you know, some of the players there.
Did that? I got called away by Chores yesterday. Did the 6'8" guy come on against Saints?
He did, yeah. He made a record. The record. 6'9", I believe. Yeah.
All right. He goes up by an inch every time I hear
maybe he's 10 foot. Who knows? But yeah, he was a big guy. But you know, I played rugby when I was younger. I'm 6'5", and the biggest problem is that reach down. It's a long way to get to the floor, you know. And you see it with Alex Walmsley every time he gets up.
Yeah.
You know, it's a long way to get back to a position of playing the ball when you're a big guy. So, you know, it has its positives in the fact that when you're jumping for a ball, you can tend to be a little bit higher than everybody else. But at the same time, you know, a little quick halfback like Rob Burrow, or you know, like that Mickey Hyam or something like that would just run rings around you often, because you're so lumbersome as a big guy. It's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, definite pros and cons, I guess. You know, until the re-merger happens and we're back to lineouts, then
Well, I saw that they've changed the rules, haven't they, in rugby union, where they can now do a 40-20 essentially, I think it is.
Yeah, what was it, 50-22 or something? Yeah,
50-22. That's like mad. Yeah. So, you know, we've got to accept. You know, I keep saying this to people. You know, focus on rugby league. You know, people are going, "Oh, we're up against the World Cup next year." Well, focus on rugby league. You know, that's what we need to do. We need to. I know it's an important thing, the World Cup, but you know, there are Euro tournaments on and there are cricket tournaments on. You know, the Euros was on and the cricket was being played. Yeah. They didn't care. They just crack on, and we just focus too much on other stuff. So, anyway, Toulouse is 60 points up now against the Broncos. At least they've scored, though.
Yeah, just looking now. Yeah, I just let's have a look. So, where are these scores coming from, Paul?
Yeah, Paul does these scores. Yeah, no, Paul does them. We just monitor the Facebook and Twitter and.
Great.
And we just create them from that. We do them ourselves. Yeah, so we don't get them from anywhere.
All right, Huddersfield winning now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Wardle try update. Yeah.
Here we go.
So this is you know, like with you know, obviously all rights reserved. So this is almost like Jeff Stelling and Chris Kamara, isn't it?
That's what we are. Who's who though? Who's who? Yeah, no, it is.
So Toulouse, we need Toulouse to score another try, and then it's the Damien 666.
Yeah, that's not always a good thing though.
Bloody hell,
Especially if it
Halifax
finishes on that.
14-12. Wow.
Wow, that's going to be. They're not going to. The Hagues are not going to be happy if that.
I'd love it. I'd love.
Oh
Like
wow!
Kevin Keegan, I would love it if
I
Newcastle.
love that. I'd love that. Yeah,
That'd
no,
be
it's good.
brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, there was a gay game earlier. Wire women versus Huddersfield women, 26-28. I believe there was a big comeback from Huddersfield. I think Paul put it in the chat.
Yeah, I see that down there.
Yeah, so let's see. There we go. Paul was saying there was a big Wire lead at half time, then a great Giants fight back in the second half. So, I don't know what's going on in the women's game at the moment. It's a fantastic thing, but the table seems to be a bit all over the place, and I'm not sure whether they've split the league into two or what they've done. I don't know. We need Karen on.
It's different. I think it's always anytime that you start up any new competition in rugby league, like the reality is that small differences get punished really hard. So you can be a so-so football team. I mean, you might get hammered, but you can muddle through and get away with narrow defeats and draws and what have you. But you get found out really quickly in rugby league. So you are going to get big straw lines when you're starting up with competition and trying to expand it. And all these, people taking part in it have other jobs and other lives to worry about. So yeah, it's going to be bumpy at the start, but it's just good to see it being played and being taken seriously. It's the only direction of travel, really, isn't it?
For sure, yeah. And I think that a lot of it's to do with the fact that there's the golf. There's a big gulf because some of the players are amateur and some of the players are semi-professional. Even though I don't know if any of them get paid, I'm guessing there's some kind of monetary value there. But there will be still. It'll be like having a league, like you're having one league and having a Super League teams, 4 Super League teams, 4 Championship teams, and 4 League One teams all in the same league.
Yeah. This
is what's going to happen. You're going to have players who get next to nothing, players who get a bit of a wage, and then players who are almost professionals playing against.
That was Martin Sadler's idea for the for the Super League, wasn't it?
Oh, that's mad. But that's exactly it. You've just said it. You've hit the nail on the head. That's where it falls over. It's all well and good. Great. 20 sub leagues or whatever it was. It's very similar to the football league below League 3. Where they have conferences, and sure, you will bring up players to a certain level, but unfortunately, there's not going to be any. You're going to have, like you said, I think it was Saints, Wigan, and then a couple of Cumbrian teams who maybe Whitehaven and Workington or something. I don't know, and you're going to have this gulf in money, and it'll just be the teams in those leagues will just get battered by 2 of the teams, and then it'll be a close game with 2 of the teams all the time. Nothing will change, So it doesn't seem to be a good plan. It seems to be, if you could put £10 million together over 5 years and run that conference, extra to what they get now, then it might work. But on the money at the moment,
no,
there's not enough money to go around for that kind of amount of players. There'd be, what was it, something like 30 teams altogether in those conferences. They'd all have to be paid the same, or else how would it be fair if you're all in the same leagues?
It left more questions than answers, that plan, really. As per, but I don't, Martin. I don't mind like that side of what I don't mind Martin's the fact he's prepared to think these things aloud and put them forward and what have you. There were some people saying, well, it just destroys his credibility. I think there's other things that are more more pressing in terms of that. I think actually just in that narrow aspect, you know, as much as I have big disagreements with him on other things, I actually think it's not the worst thing for someone to be just saying, how about this idea? What do you think about this? And even if it turns out to be, you know, a non-starter, maybe there's some element that's useful. Maybe there's something, maybe it helps underline why there's a better way to go forward. So on that, and narrowly on that, I actually, you know, whilst I might not agree with what Martin's come up with, I actually support his right to put it forward. But
yeah, there's no monopoly on ideas, is there? And the key to this is, you know,
No.
we get this every time that 2 days before a Super League Rugby Football League meeting, there is a leak of the designs to be placed to the clubs. You know,
Yeah.
But at least Martin puts his out in the public eye. You know, put them out for the public to disseminate. You know, let's talk about it. Let's rip it apart and put it back together again, and let's work out. Okay, Martin's plan. We've just worked out there that Martin's plan it was a terrible idea for the monetary side of it because we don't have enough money.
Yeah.
But if we could raise that money, you know, if a Hearn came in and was invested £10 million every 10 years or 5 years or whatever it would be, it could become a worthwhile plan, you know, or maybe there's something we can take from it that works. You know, the same as this Super League to 10 teams business. You know, a lot of people have said, "Wow, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous idea." But there might be some merit in it if we can work it all out between us of how to go forward. But yeah, I always work on this theory that those people that are at Red Hall or wherever they're based these days aren't necessarily any brainier than you or I, you know, especially if we've worked in business or we've worked in data or we've worked in schools where number planning and planning of budgets is key.
Yeah.
Everything revolves around that.
Yeah. We've got our evil straw line at London. There is 666.
Yeah. The number of the beast.
That is, I mean, people have had a pop at me for pointing out, you know, the issues at London. I'll just be interested. They dropped the prices down to half price today. And that's great, but it's got to be accompanied by a proper marketing plan. So maybe there's been a good turnout at London today. But let's see. I mean, that's where unfortunately we've had a bit of a drift towards. Do you remember that we used to take the mickey out of rugby union for never announcing proper attendances, or always there'd always be round numbers that rugby union fans travel in groups of 100 at a time. But unfortunately, rugby league's drifted in that direction. I know.
Sorry, sir, you're not allowed in because we've now got 4,002. You're going to have to stay, I'm afraid, until another 98 people come to the gate. You're not allowed in.
Yeah, but the thing is, and I also know that people, you know, at this point, some people go, well, the old attendances were a lot of guesswork and sometimes just fantasy anyway. But it was at least, even if that's true, they at least had to, you know, they had to do that, bearing in mind that they would then be collated, they would then be compared with other clubs and the historic performance, what have you. So it was still, you know, what you'd really want is the precise number of people in the ground, but actually better than nothing was what the club said was the precise number of people in the ground, because that does tell you something, even if it's not entirely accurate. But unfortunately, I mean, there's still a Bradford attendance that, as far as I know, is outstanding. Bradford versus Newcastle is first time that I can ever remember that a Bradford home attendance hasn't been given. And I think we should be hot on that and say, look, you know, that's a basic standard that we expect, that just provides a bit of transparency as to what's going on. And if you're not providing an attendance, there should be a very good reason why. It shouldn't just be left. That's what I think, anyway.
Oh, I think that game's finished now. That Halifax game, it's full time. Close game though, 14-12 to Halifax. I mean, they'll be disappointed. Well, you're disappointed with that, but I think they'll be thinking they've got away with that really, because they should be winning that game. But still, with regards to attendances, I was always understanding there were two attendances. There was the attendance for the taxman. This is legitimate, by the way. No, this is legitimate. Yeah. There was attendances for the taxman, which was essentially gate receipts on tickets that had been paid for.
Yeah.
And there was an attendance that you had to give to the police or the fire service, or for your health and safety.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't necessarily be the same figure, because you'd obviously have to tell the fire service exactly how many people in the stadium. But you'd only need to tell the taxman how many people, or record for tax purposes how many tickets were sold, not necessarily were given away or were free tickets or season tickets, and things like that. So that's why you end up with a couple of different figures. And I think the Rugby Football Union probably just went with the rounding up of the tax one. Rounding down, probably all out.
So there we go. So it's full time 666 London Broncos Toulouse. You've got full time at Whitehaven, just Pippin, Dewsbury.
Yeah.
Swinton, Oldham. Hang on, weren't Oldham miles ahead in that?
They were, I think. Yeah.
Well, 22 all now.
Swinton and Oldham. That's
Swinton on a roll.
Cellar dwellers battle there, but that makes Swinton. It's good. It's good if you're at that end of the table. It means that you kind of you're struggling for anything, scraps or scraps at all. So getting a draw is as good as a win sometimes when you're in that situation. Whitehaven, as you say, beat Dewsbury. But you'd expect that really at the moment. We're at the business end of the season where some of these teams are not really playing for positions and might be trying to do a bit more squad work, if you like.
Well, that'd be interesting if Oldham get a win out of that, and if Dewsbury have lost. I'm not sure if that league table's been updated yet.
No, it takes a little while. It takes about 20 minutes.
But then, if Oldham can finish above, if Dewsbury end up getting relegated this season, then I'm sure their fans will have a few questions about what was their chairman doing, clearing off to be to be acting CEO of a different club in their league.
Yeah, strange.
That can't be. It's not ideal, is it?
No.
It doesn't suggest a laser guided focus on the well-being and the future prospects of Dewsbury Rams Rugby League Club. How can one person be the CEO of one club and the chairman of another in the same league and do justice to both jobs? I don't know. I don't think I think it's just nonsense. But here we go. So we've got full times in pretty much everything apart from that Swinton match.
Yeah, I think with regards to I think it's a board. You can't be on the board of directors at more than one Super League club or one Championship club, but you can. Right. And I'm not sure, how you would specify, especially if you were in transition moving between clubs. There's going to be overlap, isn't there? But not. I'm not sure that a CEO can make that much difference, mid-season or. Just over a few weeks mid-season, you'd have to, I think it's just like employment law, isn't it? Where you kind of everything that happened at my last club stays at my last club, and I'm not allowed to, you would, and you wouldn't, if he did come up and tell you all sorts, you'd be like, oh, I'm not sure, not sure. Anyway. Yeah, so that's all full time now. Apart from the Swinton game, like you say, that could still end up being one of the wins for one of them. But, yeah. So with regards to Featherstone, and do you think Rovers are going to kind of pick up a bit towards the end of the season, or?
Yes, I mean fans of. Well, so there's a lot of talk about injuries. Obviously, they had the 1895 Cup final. They had the COVID outbreak. Had a bit of disruption around that. Yeah, you'd expect. I mean, and they had the 2 points deducted for the the COVID controversy at the start of the season, where the players were or weren't at a party, and then were made available for the game against Batley when perhaps they shouldn't. You'd have thought they're pretty certain to finish second. I don't think Fax will catch them. So they then they basically need to use every game between now and the playoffs as practice for 2 games that are going to decide the sort of near like the near future of the club. It's going to come down to they've basically got a big banana skin against either Halifax or Bradford at whatever Post Office Road's calling itself these days. Millennium Stadium, is it, or something? At least better than Chris Boyle's Stadium, I thought.
Yeah.
And then they've got, we presume, to go away to Toulouse and obviously win. Which they did not that long. They did that in 2019 in the playoffs. But Toulouse seem to have come on a long way since that. Fev seems to have come on along a fair bit. I don't know.
Well, you only have to look at the points difference in that table. Toulouse are on 516 and Featherstone are on 300. And that's the difference, not points difference, but the difference is win. The win percentage that the RFL have come up with. It makes it just look like it's been a one-horse race, but it hasn't. Even if you look at the actual points difference, it's only 11 points difference between the two. It's not a one-horse race at all.
No.
And this is the worst thing, the Catalans are top of the Super League and Toulouse are top of the Championship, right? But there's no guarantees
no
that they'll end up either,
I'll be very surprised. I'll be very surprised if whoever's fourth goes to Toulouse and wins.
Well, Bradford, at the moment, in that position.
It could happen. I mean, like I just like, if we were really, I think we were pretty up for that Halifax game, and still, just had those few minutes to close out, and we didn't. And Halifax, if you think it's like a computer game, then Halifax are a very sort of junior boss compared to Toulouse. Toulouse are the big boss at the end of the game. They're Dr. Robotnik, and they will take a lot more hits. I just think that it could happen, but I'd be very surprised. I think Bradford would need to play the game of the season and to get pretty lucky as well, for them to win away at Toulouse. That's how it feels to me.
What's the recent run-in been like for Bradford?
I mean, really disrupted by. So since Danny Brough did his bicep,
by dodgy corners.
Well, yeah, that as well. Well, yeah. So playing on a junior pitch at home, and then so that is disrupt. I mean, that's just, they're genuinely playing a different sport from home to away. There's a reason why we have minimum standards for professional rugby league. So they've been playing on a junior pitch at home. Danny Brough ripped his bicep. Then Jordan Lilly did his ribs. Joe Keys got concussed and then called back to Hull KR. So the halfbacks, Bradford at the start of the season looked very patchy, and then they got Lilly back, and him and Brough started to click, and they went on a long undefeated run. And then unfortunately Brough ripped his bicep just as we came into a hard run of fixtures against Fev and Fax and Widnes, so that's been a big disruptor. I don't know what happened with Brad. I mean, there's loads of good stuff. Ant Walker should probably be in the mix for Championship Player of the Year. Jordan Lilly should probably be in the mix for Championship Player of the Year. I'm sure there's lots of others at other clubs who are there or thereabouts too. But It's just a question of putting it together. As you know, as a Saints fan, you can just cruise through the season, and then it's just sort of like pull it off in the playoffs, and that's fine. Like that's the way to do it, isn't it?
Well, that's not always been the case. The Saints have been beaten many times by Bradford in the playoffs and Leeds, and there's been a lot of upsets by having that thought process where you think, oh yeah, we can blitz. We've just chilled. Saints weren't really renowned as the playoff kings. Leeds had that mantle because I think they won it from like sixth one year or something like that, if I remember right.
Yeah, there was that Brian McDermott one, wasn't them? Yeah, no, it was. It was funny how that sort of turned. It turned around 2006, didn't it? So 2006, Saints won it, and then that was the last time Saints won it for 8 years or something, was it?
Yeah, 14 was then after that. Yeah. So yeah, it was 6 then 14. So yeah, I mean it can disappear.
Yeah.
the luck can disappear, and a lot of it's down to we talk about this. I think the other week on the NRL show, a lot of it's down to the spine of the team. And I think a lot of the best teams have consistent and spines that stay in form, even if they're not top class or they're very consistent spines of teams. And Bradford's went to pot when Justin Harris turned up, and it appeared that it wasn't Justin Harris's fault. I'm just suggesting that the whole makeup of the squad seemed to disappear when at that point when they tried to accommodate a player that was obviously far too expensive or to fit them into the squad. And Saints had that problem at the end of 2006, 2007 when a lot of those top class players from that era started to slip away. Paul Sculthorpe and Kieran Cunningham started to become towards the end of the career. We didn't replace them soon enough, if you like, because you can't. How can you replace those players that have won so much for so long? Yeah. So we did get into a bit of bother. I think a lot of teams suffered from that. Wigan suffered from that in the mid-90s, when they had all those players that were superb and they started to come to the end of their careers. But they couldn't really, they had long contracts, they had expensive contracts. And when the salary cap came in, it seemed to just, it's almost sputter for them for a few years. So.
Yeah. That Swinton game's finished full time, 22-all.
Yeah. That's I haven't seen Swinton play for a long while. Funnily enough, last time I went to Oldham when they played Adelaide Rams. I bet that's a long time ago.
Is that when Buster the Bear got sent off or something?
I think so, yeah. And I was sat in my Adelaide Rams shirt. I was sat there, and I was the only one in the. It was at the football.
You were the away end.
Well, I was the away. I usually am, but it was at the football ground. I think they all play there now. But it was. I went with some Oldham friends, and they were all. And it was a rugby group, and the football stadiums. You don't even know if you go to football stadiums, they're all designed for football fans generally. But if you go with a group of rugby players, if one person moves forward, the whole line moves forward. They're all big lads, So I distinctly remember the seats being like Ellen Road, where everything was so compact, so it was a bit like that. Yeah, but I was looking at Bradford's team the other day, and they've got Matty Dawson there, haven't they? They've got Danny Brough.
Well, yeah, but he's been out for it.
Jordan Lilly, Steve Crossley.
Yeah, Crossley's been playing, and he's still. He goes pretty pink when it's warm, but he's he scores some important tries.
Levi and Zungu.
He's Crocs. He's been out injured for a long time. Unfortunately, he was doing well as well.
So what I was going to say there was you kind of look at these players and you think this is quite a good team, but as soon as you add in the injury toll, especially as I say, if it's in your spine of players or if it revolves around the more senior players, you tend to get into a bit of a hole, don't you?
Yeah. It's. I mean, I got a lot of flack for saying, look, it's not just bad luck if you haven't got any halfbacks. If you only started the season with two, and that we genuinely, given how Danny Brough has had a pretty patchy injury record over the last few years, and he's not getting any younger, to go in where you're just hoping that he and Jordan Lilly will stay fit all season, just didn't seem very realistic. And then saying, "Oh well, it's not our fault because COVID means it's hard to get loans." I mean, we've known about COVID a long time. We knew that getting loans of halfbacks might be hard as well. So yeah, just unfortunately they've tried to do it on the cheap and hope to get lucky all season. And yeah, they haven't been they've probably been a bit more unlucky than you'd expect, but not massively so. It's been exacerbated by the fact that there's been a lack of cover, and it raises questions as to why Joe Keys, had to leave in the first place. Why we had that 2019 team that beat Leeds and was on the verge of the playoffs. Probably would have made the playoffs if they hadn't have had the cup run. Why that team was allowed to scatter to four corners? It shouldn't have happened, but never mind. But yeah,
tables are interesting.
The
tables are updated there, so.
Oh, okay. Well, let's have a look then.
Yeah, you were saying about Dewsbury, the Dewsbury Oldham Swinton kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it looks like that was a big chance for Oldham to claw some back on Dewsbury, and the fact they only took a draw rather than a win, that might seal their fate. Although that said, who knows? Typical rugby league. That we're looking at it, and if we're looking at a football table, then you could say with a reasonable amount of confidence that the relegation zone is what the relegation zone is. But who knows what it'll actually be this year? I think that's it. I think that's it with London.
What I see here is it's like on no change.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's quite weird. I mean, like, it's weird how it's all sort of set in quite hard. So London can get absolutely stuffed out of sight, but it doesn't. For the league table, it doesn't matter that much because Whitehaven and York and Sheffield are so far behind that it'll take a lot of it'll take a lot of losses for London and a lot of wins for Whitehaven and York to claw that back. And I don't know if London haven't got that many. London seem to go quite well in the games against the teams below them.
Yeah, and the win point percentage is killing off a lot of hopeful. I guess this is a kind of, one of the negative sides of doing it this way is that towards the end of the season it becomes a bit of it's a difficult task for some teams to get back on. Whereas if you look at London and Whitehaven points wise, it was 17 and 15. That's a game and a half to get back.
Yeah.
But when you look at the point with the win point percentage difference, it's too far. It's like a 4 games when you work it out. Even with the Broncos being deducted a couple of points this season, it's still that makes no difference.
No.
In this format, because what's the point? What's the point of deducting them 2 points? It makes no difference whatsoever. Unless by the end of the season, I reckon they're all on the same win points percentage difference, and I don't know how far the lane, line, the actual amount of points you've actually accumulated comes. So I guess it makes no. It's just ridiculous that you can deduct 2 points and it make no difference whatsoever to the club.
Well, that's interesting. I just noticed that Wakefield are down to second bottom.
Yeah.
But that said, I mean, well, we'll see what happens. You'd have thought Hull. I know Hull KR have got a lot of people out, but given that they've run Catalan close twice, you'd have thought they will. They'll have too much for Leigh.
But this again comes to the position of not really being. I can't put any faith in the Rugby Football League when in November they made a decision, and we all said that if you make this decision now or early December, Lee are not going to be able to get enough players together to form a competent, team and it's borne out. It's not even. It wasn't even like it was almost. We talked about Brexit before. We knew what was going to happen. We knew what was going to happen here.
Yeah.
And yet they went ahead with it.
It's got to be the worst start to a Super League season by some distance. Because if you remember that Halifax team that ended up on 0 points, they actually won their first game away at London, and then lost every single game since. And then had 2 points deducted for salary cap infringements or something.
I remember, yeah.
So they ended up on 0. But they at least had, so I can't believe there's another Super League team that's waited out. I'd be interested what the old record was for games played without getting a single win in Super League. But I think Lee have smashed it. I don't know. I mean, like this, I don't know if you buy this story that, I mean, this is the thing. These rumours get let out and you don't know whether it's what's likely to happen or what someone wants to happen and they're trying to get the ball rolling behind it. But this idea that 2 will go up, none will go down, and then next year 4 will go down. So in a way, it's a sort of sop to Toulouse and Featherstone. Toulouse, basically saying, right, Fev, you can come into Super League, but you'd better finish in the top 10, otherwise you're straight back down. And that sounds like the sort of thing they would do. So I can understand why people are buying it, but it's right.
I mean, we're not blaming Lee here. We're not, we're actually, we're actually on the side of Lee. They went and did what they had to do, and that was apply, get it and get in, and they got all the players, the best players they possibly could, as such a late day, after everybody else had got the teams in. And, we're going to be in the same situation next year if they do this 2 up, no down. We're going to have too many teams scrambling around for players of a certain class that can, that just aren't available, and you'll end up bringing in players from the lower divisions, which is not a bad thing, but won't put you in the top 10. If there's a 14-team competition, it's just going to end up with, let's predict it right now. Featherstone, Lee, and possibly Wakefield are going to be bottom 3. Toulouse, that 4th, 11th, that 4th spot, 11th spot, if you like. Maybe Toulouse or Salford 10th and 11th. You can probably predict it now. We've got it on stream. We've got it recorded. We're 2 years out. They haven't even agreed this format.
No.
If it goes ahead, this is what's going to happen.
You know what?
Because you need a longer term plan.
I'll tell you what could happen. If there's 4 going down, then someone interesting like Huddersfield, Leeds, someone could blow up and end up in that bottom 4.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
That would be.
It kind of also brings another problem with money, right? Because you got like the likes of Huddersfield, or Salford, who might think, well, we've got to do everything we've got to blow everything to stay in that top 10, okay? And that could put them into a position where, they've got to make decisions that they wouldn't have done normally on player contracts, or, and then they still don't make the 10. And suddenly they bust because they've got these player contracts that, they'd had to sign up.
Yeah.
You just don't. There's such radical changes to our format, as we discussed with Richard the other night, Richard de la Riviere. It is just undermining the sport so much. You can't keep doing this every year.
No.
Just make small changes occasionally.
Yeah. I just think, it's it would have been interesting. I mean, would have been interesting if Leeds had gone down in 2019, and it wasn't that far away. If they'd have lost to London at Millennium, what do they call it, Merseyside Magic? If they lost to London at Anfield, which was pretty tight, then they would have been in real trouble at the end of the season.
But
Yeah.
but you see there again. You see, the RFL and Super League would have just changed the format. There's no doubt that would have happened. And I'm not suggesting that they're biased to Leeds. They just would look at it and go, Leeds are one of the few clubs that will spend up to the cap that have the backup to be, for Super League. We can't afford to have another Bradford where the big team drops out completely, falls off the edge of a cliff.
Yeah.
Because that happened, and it's devastating to St. Helens. It's devastating to everybody when a big club goes, and we can't afford to have that to happen. So I do understand that we've got to have that.
Yeah.
Anyway, mate, it's all the games are finished. It's 5:15.
It is better to be getting on with some stuff, but been interesting kicking it about. Oh, we'll have to see. I mean, I thought I've got my shirt on, Paul. I thought we were going to talk a bit of what's going to happen next. I'm backing CNAS to make a recovery and come back into contention for the European Championship.
Do you think so at the end of the year this year?
I don't know, but I would say I'd really like to see Combined Nations. I'd really like to see Jamaica get a shout and get some good fixtures. As I think they'd make a big contribution to it.
Okay, so let's work on the theory that when the season's over and the grand final's complete, that a lot of those players who would probably normally go back to Australia or New Zealand or the Pacific Islands, they won't be going anywhere this year because you have to go into quarantine in Australia and in the Pacific Islands. And, for the same reason that the Aussies aren't coming for the World Cup. Same problem.
Yeah.
So they're going to stay here. So I do agree that that's a possibility. That's good. I think at England v CNAS, let's just All Stars is the best in it. Just call it All Stars. Yeah. What's the problem with that? Or Rugby League All Stars or something like that. It's it's difficult, but I guess they'll go, oh, it's not an All Stars team because it's not filled with the English All Stars because they're on the other side, if you like. So they can't call it. It's got to have a name prefix kind of thing. So, but what about France as well? Could they get involved in a tri-nation?
Oh, they have to now, yeah. I mean, I presume that you'd have to, looking at how well Catalans and Toulouse are doing, you'd have to give them you'd have to give them tests, and you have to give them, hopefully you put them one in Toulouse and one in Perpignan, and you give them that chance to go. If England weren't able, minus England and minus their NRL players, and if they they obviously they lost to the All Stars, so going to France would probably be a challenge too. So yeah, I think there's lots of exciting possibilities. Just hope they're working through them all and not making lazy decisions about who plays and who doesn't. Especially after, did you see Jamaica's kit launch?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, Jason Robinson. Yeah,
I think actually Jamaica remind me a bit of Keighley Cougars, in the sort of Cougar Mania days. They're sort of showing how it can be done and how you can build some excitement behind a national team. So I think, on reflection, it was a crying shame that there wasn't a way to get Cougars into Super League. And I think in the same way, it'd be a crying shame if we didn't build on the momentum that Jamaica have got. But yeah, anyway, that's my little sort of postscript. Final thought.
Well, I think it's right. I think it's 80. What is it? 80? It was 80 days to when the World Cup was going to kick off. So they've got best part of 70 days to organise something else. But the more teams,
which in COVID times is plenty.
Yeah, the more teams you put into the mix, the harder it becomes.
True.
And there's no excuse for England at the moment because none of the players that really are playing well are playing in the NRL at the moment. Josh Hodgson's not playing well. Elliot Whitehead's not playing well. One of the Burgess one that's still at South. Yeah. He's doing okay, but I don't think it'd be a first prop call.
Interesting that.
So there's no excuse for England at the moment. If they play France, they should be beating them. If they play the combined Aussies, should be beating them. Why? Why? Because these are the best. Where else? There's no other. There are no other players.
No. And that's why we call it a test match, Paul.
Exactly.
It's a test.
No, exactly. But there's no excuse because and people will say, "Oh, we were behind without our NRL players, or it's COVID." Well, let's give them a chance. Then I'm all for that. I'm all for France versus England, or like you say, an All Stars game versus England. If it's a test, that's what we want. I've been looking at doing another show where we watch a game. Everybody watches a game with us. An old game, like from the 50s or 60s or 70s or early 80s, maybe. And I've been doing I've been doing some research, right? And you forget how good the Great Britain tours were. Not necessarily the club versus Australia games, but the test matches and how many people went and the atmosphere. And I don't. We last went to a proper test match kind of thing as a group for the Tri Nations final at Anfield was the last one, and it was a bit of a But the last good one we went to was probably in 2004. We got to all of the test matches generally. 2004, and it ties in crazily, with Great Britain.
Yeah,
a lot of it, not England. It doesn't necessarily. I don't know what the difference of the team is. Hardly,
Yeah,
you might get Regan Grace in the team, or the odd, Welshman or Scotsman in the team. But apart from that, Brian Carney maybe Ireland. The team's the same, but the atmosphere is different. And I'm not going to sit here and go that England's not as good as Great Britain as a spectacle because it's the same spectacle.
Yeah.
Why is it different?
Interesting.
So we're going to do some of those shows. So you're welcome to join us there.
Brilliant.
So that's the results show over today, live scores show. Thanks to Andrew for coming on, and we'll see you all soon.